Hey guys, Eric here. So I'm out on a morning walk, which I do pretty frequently, and I just wanted to try something new here. So I often read just a little bit in the morning, usually a chapter of some book related to guitar making, even if it's only tangentially related to guitar making. It, is just somehow related to my business as a luthier in some way. And it's nice then to go for a short walk. Helps to sort of let that information soak in and congeal into my larger global understanding of what I'm doing. And today I had the idea that, you know what, it might be interesting and maybe even helpful, but at the very least interesting, to share my reflections or musings, if you want to call it that, on what I read today. So what did I read today? Today I read The Responsive Guitar by Earvin. Obviously I didn't read the whole book. It's an enormous book. It's a deep book. It is an excellent book, probably the best book on guitar making, at least that I know of out there. Maybe not for a beginner, but certainly for an intermediate or even an advanced builder. There's just so much in there. And today the chapter that I read was, I don't remember what it was called, but it was about the cultural differences between classical guitar builders and classical guitar players, and steel string guitar builders and steel string players, and how this cultural difference between the two, how one as a builder should sort of walk the walk and speak the language in order to accommodate these cultural differences. So for example, the world of classical music and classical guitar making is very hierarchical. So according to Earvin Samaji's view, and I think I'd have to agree with him from what little I know about it. So it's hierarchical in the sense that all understanding of playing technique and of the quality and build of the instruments comes from a long, continuous tradition of classical guitar making that dates back to Antonio de Torres and everything going on in Spain at that time. And so there's really not a culture of experimentation or of innovation within classical guitar making. There's a little bit of it. You see it from time to time, but largely the makers that are successful in that niche build traditional, very traditional instruments, and any departure from the traditional is a huge risk. And it's always a risk, but with steel string guitar making, you can afford to take those risks because steel string makers are much more forgiving, or forgiving isn't really the right word. Steel string makers are more accepting of new design, because I don't want to say, and I don't want to misrepresent Samaji in saying that steel string makers are less critical, because I do think they are critical, just in a very different way. I think Samaji would say in an intuitive way, whereas classical makers are critical in a sort of top-down, by the books, there's one right answer kind of way. And so I would think that these sorts of differences are very important for a beginning luthier to consider, because if you're listening to this, you might still be trying to decide what sort of niche of lutherie you're most interested in. And this could determine it, because if you want to innovate, if you want to really be an artist, I would say steel string lutherie is the way to go. Or honestly, electric guitar steel string. Oh, electric guitar lutherie is even more innovative than steel string guitars because you're not limited in the ways that you are with building an acoustic instrument. I mean, just go on Instagram and look at some of the electric guitars out there, and you can see some really wild and innovative stuff. Whereas an acoustic guitar, on some level, always looks like an acoustic guitar. And a classical guitar, even more so. A classical guitar always looks like a very specific type of acoustic guitar. Now, where the innovation, or maybe not the innovation, that's not the right word, where the art of building classical guitars comes into play is purely in sound, in tone, in shaping the braces, in voicing the sound box, which is an extremely rewarding thing to spend your time on, I think. So it's not to say that classical guitar making is, you know, any less rewarding or any less creative than steel string guitar making. It's just creative and rewarding in a different way, where your focus is narrow on a specific aspect of lutherie, just that sound production. Everything else, the fit, the finish, the aesthetic of it, is in a way sort of determined for you. Again, I'm generalizing here, and I'm also going a little bit off of course, what Samaji wrote. And he was generalizing as well. But it's true. In that world, radical designs are just not welcome, like they are in the steel string guitar world. Another great piece of advice that I got from Earvin in that chapter was about how in the classical world, which I'm not in, I'm a steel string builder, but if I was in the classical world, I would have to approach the teachers, the well-known teachers of students, because they're the authorities, and basically students buy classical guitars based on teachers' recommendations, which, with the way that world is structured hierarchically, that seems to make sense. I could totally see that. So if you're a classical guitar maker just getting started out, or you've been one for a while, totally makes sense to approach teachers and try and impress them with your work. Of course, your work has to be top-notch. That's always a given. But from a marketing perspective, it makes sense to go for the teachers, not the players themselves. Anyway, I hope this was at least interesting, and maybe I'll do it again, but that's all I got for today. So I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and talk to you later. Bye.
If you learned something here, please give this video a like and subscribe so you can be notified when I release a new DIY guitar making video every Friday. And if you want to really learn more, take one of my structured online courses at ericschaferguitars.com, or register for a hands-on guitar building workshop here with me in Burnville, Pennsylvania.